Okay, everybody, this is chapter 11, section 3. This is dividing polynomials, and this one can get a little bit tough. So I really just need you to have an open mind, work hard at it, use the video to go back over it a little bit more, use your textbook. It's a really good resource. Try to make sure you use that. So let's try to get going on this. First off, when we're doing dividing by polynomials, you need to make sure that when you have a polynomial and you're dividing it, you need to make sure that the powers that you have. You need to make sure that whatever you have, whatever one's the biggest, you always have to go all the way down to 1. So sometimes if I was missing this negative 6x squared, I have to do a placeholder and I put in 0x squared if I didn't have something to the second power. In this case, I do, but just ahead of time, we're going to have to do that. So when you're dividing, you got to make sure whatever the biggest power is, it was this 3, I got to have every other power down to the 1. Sometimes I could have a constant, so maybe it's +8 or -4, whatever it might be. Constants are okay, but that just has to be kind of in standard form, okay? So just to be aware of that going forward, and I'll come back and mention it later, okay? When you have something like this, I just want you guys to know when I'm dividing by a monomial or one term, it's kind of like just dividing everything by that monomial. So it's like reducing it, okay? So we want to think of that, and remember your rules with exponents. You want to, in this case, I'm dividing, so I want to subtract the exponents, okay? And split it up. I want to take the 9 and the 3. Can I reduce it? Yeah, it gets me a 3. I got x to the third, x squared, so I want to subtract those. That gets me x to the first, okay? I got a -6 being divided by a +3, so that's going to get me a -2. And the x squares are the same, so I can cancel those out, okay? And then I have a 15 divided by 3, so then I could take that, it gets me 5. But then I have an x to the first on top and an x to the second on the bottom, so that x to the first is going to go away, and I'm going to take a power away from that x squared. That's going to leave me with an x on the bottom. So there's my division with a polynomial being divided by a monomial, okay? So you want to think of this. If you guys remember long division, that's kind of what we were just doing. This is kind of acting like a remainder, okay? And if I know a lot of teachers in middle schools and lower elementary grades aren't really teaching long division. They just say whip out your calculator and you get a decimal if it doesn't go in evenly. We need to do some long division here, okay? All right, so I'll do one more here with you. I'm going to take this 2x squared. I'm going to go ahead and divide it into everything. And you don't have to do it this way. I just think it's an easy way to kind of show it. The other thing I had to check is just make sure I have descending order of my variables, and they're in standard form, okay? So the 4 divided by the 2 gives me 2. I got x to the third, x squared gives me x to the first, subtract the exponents. I have 10 divided by 2 gives me 5. I got an x squared and x squared, they're going to cancel each other out. I have 3 divided by 2, so I'm going to leave it that way. 3 over 2 doesn't go in evenly. I also had an x to the first and an x squared, so the x to the first will go away, and the power of x will also go away, so it leaves me with a little x at the bottom, okay? So there's a couple of really good examples there for you. I'm going to help you set this one up. I'm missing, actually on this one I'm going to be okay. I am missing an x to the third, and I am missing an x to the first, but I'm dividing by just one monomial, so I'm good to go with this, okay? So go ahead and hit pause and try these two on your own. Okay, so I'm going to divide this first one by 5x to the third. The 5's are going to cancel each other out. 5 divided by 5 is 1, so I'm subtracting exponents. I get x to the first. Negative 15 divided by 5 is going to give me a negative 3. But I have an x squared on top and an x to the third on the bottom. So the x squared is going to cancel out. I'm going to take 2, power of 2 out of that x to the third. So that's going to give me an x on the bottom. Okay, 1 divided by 5x to the third, there is nothing I could do with that. So it's just 1 divided by 5x to the third. Okay. All right. This next one, 12 divided by 6 is going to give me a 2. C to the fourth divided by c to the first is subtracting exponents, so it gets me c to the third. I have 18 divided by 6 is going to give me 3. And a c squared divided by c to the first is going to give me c to the first. 9 divided by 6 is just 9 over 6. I'll do that up here so you can see it. But can I reduce it at least? It doesn't divide, but I can reduce it. 3 goes into both the top and the bottom, so I get 3 over 2. And then the c's are going to cancel each other out because they're the same power. Okay, so that's how you get those. All right, so that's kind of just like, you know, reducing fractions, and we end up with some kind of answer there. Okay. All right. So earlier I kind of said, you know, how do we divide these? In the old days, before calculators, we had to set up long division, okay? And we'd have to be able to multiply or divide stuff into another number. Get rid of that for a second. Long division, all right? So how many times does 21 go into 73? And I believe it goes in 3 times. So I put that 3 above the 3 and the 73. 3 times 21 gives me 63. And I'm supposed to subtract it. And that gets me 10. And then the next thing I'm supposed to do is bring down the 7. I was taught to put a little x there. And then how many times does 21 go into 107? It goes in 5 times. So I get 105. Okay. Subtract it, I get 2. And at this point, when I was a kid, we did not have calculators, so we were supposed to write a remainder of 2. We then also later on learned that we'd write it as 35 2 over 21. And we would take that, 21 came from that. Then we learned how to be able to make that a decimal. I think it came out to something like this. Then we were taught rounded, so something like that. Okay, so that was using long division. All right. So we're going to go ahead and take a look at being able to factor a polynomial by another polynomial. So I'm going to take that x plus 3, and I'm going to make a long division problem. And I'm going to divide that into 3x squared minus 4x plus 13. So I'm going to go back to what I said a little bit at the beginning of this. I'm looking at my powers here, and the biggest power is 2, and I have a power of 1. I need to have it all the way down through 1, so I don't have to put in any placeholders here. Okay. So this is where you got to write some notes here. The first thing we want to do is taking a look at this, the first term, x. How many times does it go into the first term of the divisor? My pen's not working today. So how many times does x go into the first term of the divisor? Well, I got to kind of convert this x into 3x squared. I'm going to do that by multiplication. So if I had to turn this one into that one, I'd have to multiply this by 3x. So I'm going to put that up here. So, and I'm going to take this 3x I put up on top and distribute it to this and write my answer underneath these guys. Okay, so 3x times x is 3x squared, and 3x times 3 is 9x. Okay, all right, so that's kind of tough. There's things you got to ask yourself and then be able to do. But I'm trying to take this first term outside and make it to be exactly the same to what's inside. Just the first terms, okay? Now, if you go back to my long division problem back over here, when I get something and I multiply it and then I put it underneath my divisor, I'm supposed to subtract it. So I want to take the subtraction sign and distribute it to both terms that I got here, okay? So really this 9x is now going to become negative 9x. I'm going to subtract this. These guys cancel each other out. And negative 4x and negative 9x now gives me negative 13x. Okay? All right. So now, kind of like in long division, I still have something over here. I got to bring it down. So that's going to get me a negative 13x. Okay. I'm going to take this first term again. So I'm going to kind of go and repeat my steps here. I'm going to take this first term x. How do I make it negative 13x? Well, I think if I multiply it by negative 13, I'll make it be the same. So negative 13 times x is negative 13x. But I have to distribute it to this 3. So negative 13 times 3 is negative 39. Okay? All right. So now I'm going to go ahead and I need to subtract that. So that's going to change this to positive and also going to change that to positive. These 13x's will go ahead and cancel each other out. And negative 13 plus 39, or 39 minus 13, gives me 26. And that, I'm all done. I've run out of divisors, so I'm done. That's my remainder, okay? So my answer is going to look like this. That 3x minus 13 that I had on top, this 26 is positive, so plus 26 over that thing I divided into, x plus 3. And that's your answer. So long division, this is an Algebra 2 thing. You hit pretty early in Algebra 2, so want to give it a good shot here and try, okay? It's tough, but I'm not going to deny that, but you guys have skills and just need to be using it, have some confidence, okay? All right. So go ahead and try another one. I'm going to check my powers are all in order, so I'm good there. So I can go ahead and write this. Okay. So the first thing I do is, how do I make this x 2x squared? Well, I think if I multiply it by 2x, I'm good to go. So remember, I have to distribute it to both of these terms out here. So 2x times x is 2x squared. 2x times 1 is 2x. Okay? I want to now subtract that. I'm distributing a negative sign or a subtraction sign to everything on this line. And then the 2x squares, they cancel each other out. Negative 1x, negative 2x gives me negative 3x. Okay, bring down the 3, and it will be a negative 3. Bring the sign with it, and now I repeat my step. How do I make this x negative 3x? Well, I think if I multiplied it by negative 3, it would work. So distribute this negative 3 to both of these. So negative 3x, and then minus 3. I need to go ahead and subtract it. So remember, if I'm subtracting, it's basically I change all the signs following it. So that's going to change to positive. This will also change to positive. This cancels each other out. In this case, these guys cancel each other out, so I really get 0. All that's telling me is that I don't have a remainder. Okay, so my answer is what I have on top. 2x minus 3. Okay, all right, so hopefully you did pretty good there. All right, so this is one, a couple here where we have to think. If I look at my powers here, I got a 3 and a power of 1. I'm missing a 2, power of 2. So I have to use something called a placeholder, just 0, x squared. Just allows me to keep kind of going through it. Okay. So 3x minus 1, I'm going to divide it into 18x to the third, that plus 0x squared to hold my place, minus x, 8x, sorry, plus 2. Okay? And now I can go ahead and do long division here. So this one's going to take us a little bit more time. There's one more term to mess with. Okay? Why don't you hit pause and see if you can give that one a shot on your own. It's nothing different. I've set it up for you. You're doing this one the same way you did the other one. And then I'll also do the second one. We also had to put in another 0x squared. So I'm going to set that one up while you hit pause, and then I'll come back and do both of these, okay? Okay, here we go. So taking this 3x, how do I make it 18x to the third? I think I can multiply it by 6x squared. But I have to distribute it to both of these, okay? So I'm going to get 18x to the third minus 6x squared, okay? I have to subtract it. So, sorry, that's a third. Going to get rid of those, and that's going to change to plus when I make that minus sign distributed. So I get 6x squared, bring down the negative 8x. Okay. Now I repeat my process. How do I make this 3x 6x squared? Well, I think if I multiply it by 2 and x, it should work, but I have to take the 2x and distribute it here again. So 6x squared minus 2x. I'm going to go ahead and subtract that. That's going to make that minus. That's going to change this to plus. This is going to cancel each other out. And here I'm going to get negative 6x. Bring down this 2. And then repeat my process. So 3x into 6x, this negative 6x. Now I got to be careful here. I have to make the 3x into negative 6x. So that's really going to be multiplying by a negative 2. So that's a little bit different than what we've had before. So it's going to give me negative 6x. And I have to take the negative 2 and multiply it by negative 1. So that gives me positive 2. Okay. But you got to remember I have to subtract it. So I'm going to subtract it. That means I change this sign, change this sign. And that's going to allow this to get canceled out. It also cancels these guys out. So I get 0. That means I don't have a remainder. Okay. So my answer is 6x squared plus 2x minus 2. Okay. All right. Hopefully you can follow that one. You did pretty good on your own. I'm going to go ahead and do this guy too. How many? I got to take the x and see how many times it goes into x to the third. I got to erase this for a second. Sorry, it's sitting behind my little recording icon thing. All right, so x plus 3. X to the third, put in a 0x squared because I didn't have a power of 2, minus 4x and plus 12. Okay. All right. How do you make x into x to the third? Multiply it by x to the second, but distribute that. So I get x to the third plus 3x squared. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and subtract it. So that's going to make that negative and also make that negative. These cancel each other out. And this gets me a negative 3x squared. Bring down the next term, so that's a negative 4x. And then go back and repeat my process. How do I make 3x into negative 3x squared? Well, I think I'm going to have to multiply it by a negative, and it'll be 3 and x. So distribute that to your divisor. So I get negative 3x squared plus, or I'm sorry, minus 9x. Go ahead and subtract that. So it's going to change the signs. These will cancel each other out. This gives me 5x. Bring down the next term. How many times does this x go into 5x? Goes in, I think, 5 times. So distribute that. 5 times x is 5x. 5 times 3 is 15. And you're going to go ahead and subtract that. So that's going to make that negative here and this negative here. So these will cancel each other out. And here I get negative 27. Okay. I'm going to do that right on my notes so I don't believe it. Oh, made a mistake there. Gotta read. This was a positive 12 right here. Okay, made it negative 12. Okay, so that's going to get me a negative 3. Sorry about that. So my answer is going to be what I have as my divisor, x squared minus 3x plus 5, and I had a remainder this time. It was negative 3 over what I was dividing into. Okay? All right. So there you go. One more. Just messing with you here, just making sure you understand what standard form is. This is not in standard form. That is also not in standard form. And I need to make sure that I have everything right. So let's just rewrite it correctly first. My biggest exponent is 2. I do have a power of 1, and I have a constant of negative 1. Okay? Divided by, and I need to flop these, so I'm good to go there. Okay? I have all the powers in order, from biggest to smallest, so I don't have to add anything. I can just get going. Okay? So we're just seeing if you know what standard form is. Okay? Why don't you hit pause, set up the division problem, and then come back and we'll look at the solution. Okay. Okay. 2x goes into 4x squared, 2 and x, so I get 4x squared minus 6x. I'm going to go ahead and subtract that, so that's going to change that sign. These go away. This gives me a negative 4x. Bring down the next term. How do I make 2x into negative 4x? I think I'm going to have to just multiply it by a negative 2. So distribute that, I get negative 4x. That will, negative 2 times negative 3 is going to give me a positive 6. I'm going to go ahead and subtract that. That's going to change this sign and that sign. So that's going to get me a negative, these will cancel out, sorry. That'll give me a negative 7. Okay. So my answer is 2x minus 2 minus, because this is negative, 7 over 2x minus 3. Okay. All right, your section summary is make sure we go back to that first kind of rule. How do I make the first term in my divisor the same as my dividend? So the dividend's what's inside, the divisor's what's on the outside, okay? I might have messed up that word earlier, okay? And I have to make sure I distribute it. When it is a polynomial. Okay, and you want to keep repeating the process. Until you run out of terms. Okay, and then one last note is make sure to have all powers big to small. So remember today what we did a couple times, we had to put in a 0x and it was to the power of 2. Okay? So that was a tough one. You got to just work hard at it. You can do it. You know how to multiply and subtract. It's tough. Just got to be able to work at it and keep having some confidence in your ability. Okay? All right.